So we were talking about sniffing in our last session. Okay. And I believe there was something that I need to cover today, which was how you can bind your payload with a legitimate executable file. Okay. So, guys, any doubts so far? Anything that is not clear? No doubts. Great. Okay, so I have booted up my Kali here. Let me just log in. Let me open my terminal here. Increase the font size a little. We have got some miscellaneous file here. Let me just remove them. Nice. Let's go to my temp directory. Okay. So there are various ways for binding your payload with the legitimate looking application. Okay. One way is through some cryptors and binders. Okay. So there are certain cryptors and binders out there which can be used in your Windows based operating system. Let me show you cryptors and binders. Yeah, some presentation here to bypass antivirus, right? And to encrypt the payload, to bind it to some other executable file. So you can download a few decryptors and binders. That is one thing. That is one way. Another way is through your MSF Venom. Okay. How can I do that using MSF Venom? So let me just do MSF Venom hyphen L payloads grep Windows. Let's try to list the payloads specific to Windows. Why is it taking so long? Yeah, the output is here. Let's select some kind of a shell here. Let's select Windows shell reverse TCP. Copy selection. Go here. MSF Venom hyphen P followed by the payload L host LHOST L port. Let me get my IP address. My IP address is here. Port number, let's say 63. Okay, 63. Let's use some kind of an encoder as well to encode our payload. I can get a list of encoders using MSF Venom hyphen L encoders. Okay, so out of here, I'm going to choose something which is having a good rank or excellent rank. So I can use this one, or I can use this one. Let's take this encoder hyphen E used to encode your payload. Okay. Then I want to mention some number of iterations using hyphen I flag. Let's say 15 would be good enough. 15. Output format. Let me just mention the raw format. Encode in what? The payload. We are going to encode the payload. How? This is what this encoder is going to do. It is going to perform some polymorphic XOR additive feedback encoder, something like that. Output format raw hyphen O for output file name. I want to create some kind of a binary file here. Let's say ch dot bin. Ch dot bin. Okay, that's what I created here. Meanwhile, let me get nc.exe. A lot of executable files are here. Let me just use whoami.exe. Okay, cp whoami.exe to the temp directory. So what do I have here? I have my malicious payload and my executable file over here. Okay, this can be any executable file. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bind this file, this malicious payload, along with this exe file. How to do that? Simply type msf venom hyphen p. What kind of payload do you want to mention? Null, no payload. Hyphen x for template. I want to provide whoami.exe followed by output format as exe. This is my output format. Mm, I can mention the architecture here as well, like cross 86 or 64. I can mention the platform here as platform space Windows. That is what my target platform is. I can use a different encoder here as well. Okay. If I want to encode it once again, I can do that. Then let's use another encoder. Mm, Another excellent one. This one. Let's use this one. Copy this hyphen e hyphen I. Let's go for 5 iterations, and then output this thing to a file. The file name, let's say, who am I 1.exe. Okay, this is my output file, and I want to take the input file as uh, the payload one. Its name was ch.bin. Okay, press enter. Okay, architecture for a custom payload. Let me select the architecture here, hyphen hyphen arc as, let's say, x86. I have already, you must select an architecture for a custom payload. Right, I'm selecting the architecture. Okay, the payload that I used was a 64-bit payload. Let me just change the architecture to 64. Oh, nobody's going to tell me there is a typo over here. Huh? And I have mentioned this flag at a wrong place. This is the wrong place. Hyphen hyphen arc x64. Yeah, so it's done now. Let's do an ls over here. Hmm. Okay, so here you can see that I have created this payload, right? That says whoami.exe. Okay, so that's how you can use this. This is the command that you can use for using a custom file. Okay. Okay. So let's get back to my sniffing module. Let's open Paint over here. Now, talking about sniffing, I probably would have given you some sort of introduction, like what is sniffing. Hmm? It is the act of capturing the packet. It is the act of listening through the wire. That is sniffing, right, guys? Right. We talked a little bit about sniffing in our previous session. So let's talk about two types of sniffing. So we have got one as active sniffing and another one as passive sniffing. So you can see here, one is your passive sniffing and another one is your active sniffing. So what happens in case of passive sniffing is, uh, let's go here. Let's say you are connected to a hub-based network. Okay. If you are connected to a hub-based network, then what is going to happen? What are the properties of a hub? Hub is going to broadcast everything. Hmm? That's how hub works. I hope everyone is clear with the difference between hub, switch, and a router. What is hub? What is router? What is switch? Right. So we can say that hub is like very dumb device. Okay. Hub does not care about from where the data is coming from, where data is supposed to be sent. Hub is simply going to broadcast the data to all of the interfaces. So what happens in case of hub is, let's say there are two devices, Alice and Bob in case of hub, okay, and they're having some communication. They are connected to a hub-based network. So this is your Alice, and this is your Bob. B. B is for Bob. Okay. Now let's say you started a sniffer here. This is your attacker machine. Okay. Attacker. Blah blah blah. You started your Wireshark sniffer here. So when you start your sniffer here, you would be able to capture all the packets which are being sent to and fro from A and B. Okay. That is what passive sniffing is known as. When you're connected in a hub based network, you did not do any sort of attack. You simply started a sniffer on your own machine. That's all. Okay. Nothing else. No more. But nowadays, you would have observed that we are going to be connected in a switch based network or a router based network rather than being connected to a hub based network. So, how can we do sniffing if we are connected to a switch or a router? Any idea? Port mirror. How are you going to do a port mirror? Do you have access to the switch? We can exploit this switch, right? So there are certain attack against the switch. Can you name any one of them? Don't recall any, not an issue. What about others? Guys, man in the middle. Yeah, so MITM is, you can say, an umbrella term. It is not something very specific. So, man in the middle attack can be performed, but the question is, what are the attack techniques? So let's talk about MITM. man in the middle attack. What happens in case of man in the middle is, let's remove this one. Let's clear everything. Let's go here. Okay. And what do we have here? First of all, let's remove this thing. Assume it does not exist as of now. Okay. And you are connected to a normal switch based network, and Alice and Bob are trying to communicate with each other. So what is going to be the flow of traffic? If Alice is trying to send some data to the Bob, the data is going to be sent this way and vice versa. If you start a sniffer on the attacker machine, would you be able to capture these packets? Would you be able to capture these packets? Yes or no? So I'm saying that you are connected to a switch based network. Okay. And there are two machines connected. One is Alice and one is Bob. And they are trying to communicate with each other. Okay. That's how their traffic flow is going to look like when they are sending data to and fro. And there's a third device that is connected to the network, that is attacker. You start a sniffer here. Hmm? My question is, would you be able to capture the communication between Alice and Bob? The answer is no. No, we cannot. How can we capture those packets which are not coming to my interface? Hmm? Wireshark by default is only going to capture those packets which are coming to you. Packets which are not coming to you, you would not be able to capture them because your sniffer is running here on your machine. It is only going to show you those packets which are received by your machine. Okay. So for these purposes, for these kind of circumstances, we have got this MITM techniques, that is man in the middle attacks. Okay. So what happens in case of man in the middle attack is, your attacker is going to perform such some technique. Okay, we are going to talk about the technique just in a while. Something is going to be performed by the attacker, and then what is going to happen? And then when Alice is going to send some data to Bob, the traffic is going to go this way. Okay. When Alice is trying to communicate with Bob, and when Bob would like to send some message to Alice, it is going to go this way. Now the attacker would be able to sniff the communication that is happening between the Alice and Bob. I hope this thing is clear. What is MITM? You inserted yourself into the into someone else's conversation. That is MITM. Okay. Now we have got certain techniques for MITM, like you can say cam table flooding is one of them. Hmm? What is cam table flooding? So cam table is essentially, there's a table that exists inside the switch, hmm, that holds the entries that maps the MAC address to the port. Okay, that in this switch, the switch is going to make a record like which device is connected to which interface. Okay, if I need to give you an example over here, let's say this is a switch. This switch is having three interfaces, 1, 2, and 3. There are three different physical ports on which these machines are connected. So in the cam table, the switch is going to make a record of this thing. Like on my first interface, machine having this MAC address is connected, BB is connected. On my third interface, AAA is connected. On my second interface, CCCC is connected. Okay. So there's a technique known as CAM table flooding. What is CAM table flooding? CAM table flooding. Who is going to tell me? No one? Okay. So what happens in case of CAM table flooding is, okay, one more thing. Your CAM table, the full form for CAM is here content addressable memory. Okay. So content addressable memory. Now what happens in case of CAM table flooding is attacker tries to send a lot of fake packets to the switch. Okay. And it tries to flood this CAM table. Guys, can you hear me? I believe there is some network issue in between. Okay, so what happens in this is CAM table flooding is the attacker is going to send, not only send, it is going to flood the CAM table of the switch, okay, with false entries, and there is an upper limit to the number of entries that can be holded or contained by the switch. The value ranges from 60,000 to 128,000. Okay. What attacker is going to do is attacker is going to start bombarding or start flooding with round about 130,000 false requests to the CAM table. Once the CAM table is flooded, what happens next is the switch goes to the failure state and switch start broadcasting the packets. Switch starts broadcasting the packets. So that way, if attacker is going to start running a listener or start running a sniffer, attacker would be able to get all the packets. Like once switch starts broadcasting, if Alice is sending something to Bob, that same thing is going to be sent to the attacker as well as to the Bob. Okay. So this way the attacker would be able to capture the data. Okay. Now there's another technique that is known as ARP poisoning. ARP cache poisoning, or you can say ARP table poisoning, ARP spoofing, or ARP poisoning. Question.
Uh, Rishabh, my question is, you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah,
My
I can.
question is, let's say since my attacker PC is connected to one of the ports of the switch, right? So if we are doing a cam flooding, it's gonna go through only one port. So even if we're gonna to put too many requests, it's still going to the one port. So why will it? How can it cam table is gonna fill up?
So you are saying that it is still going to hold entries for a single port,
Yes,
single.
see. Normally, what happens is, if I right or wrong, you let me know. Okay, this is my logical explanation. Let's say if I am connected to, let's say, port one. Okay, so now I'm gonna send request that, okay, update this port as this MAC address. So it's gonna update. Now, whenever the next comes, it's gonna update on that port, right? It's not gonna update the other ports which are connected, or maybe logical ports which VLAN or anything like that.
Mhm.
So how can the cam tell? Because it will keep on updating the same port. So how can it be
It is
called as a
going to,
flooding? Because it's
yeah,
gonna flood all the other ports as well, right?
but it is going to create a separate entry for it. Okay, let me try using some kind of a text here. It's like if let's go to paint, that would be better. if there is some kind of a table there, okay, like this, and divided in like this. Okay, so what is going to happen is when you send something, so there is no restriction such like that a specific port does cannot be binded to multiple MAC addresses. Okay, so like for the first time when you send the request, let's say it mentioned here like fast interface, fast Ethernet. Let me increase the size here. FA, let's say 00. This was the interface name. Okay, and it was having MAC address as A. Now you are saying is what I believe what from where you are getting confused is now if I'm going to send another entry, it is going to override this one. Hmm? That is not going to be the case.
Okay,
Instead,
that's
what
what
it is going to
confusing.
do is, yeah, it is going to write another MAC address here. Like this interface also has BBB. This interface also has CCC. The same interface here, 00, DDDDD, something like that. Okay, that's how the table is going to be flooded. Right. I
And
hope
what
I am
about
able to answer.
those ports which are actually working in the starting, like let's say port one and port three are connected to Bob and Ann.
Yeah.
Okay, so now what about those cam tables? Those will be as what they were, right?
Yeah. So there is no separate cam table for
No,
them.
there's
There
only
is
one
only
only.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So what I'm saying is there any kind of an override happens? Basically, my confusion is coming from, let's say there are gonna be, let's say you told me there was some amount of limit, after which it will start broadcasting all the packets, right?
Yeah.
So isn't there a principle like overwriting or rejecting or maybe port closure? The port automatically shut down because there's too many requests. uh, why, how will this how this flooding will create so much of a problem?
Yes, there are. So right, what you are talking about is such certain defensive mechanism. Okay, so actually the network administrator can configure your switch, and it can enable the port security. Okay, there's these features of port security where you
Okay.
these cam tables can be first of all statically it is only going to learn entries statically. That is one way. Another one is you can um, put this switch to put that port to shutdown state before making the switch to failure state. Okay, that is also an option. But those are your defensive mechanism. If defensive mechanism have been applied, then cam table flooding is not going to work in that case scenario. Cam table flooding is only going to work when these sort of defensive mechanism are not in place. Okay, when the switch is allowed to configure, when the switch is allowed to have more than one MAC address assigned to a specific interface. Okay, then only this is going to work.
And when you say like when the flooding happened and everything is it's gonna haywire, switch is not able to comprehend will not be able to comprehend more packets, then it starts broadcasting everything to all the ports.
Yeah.
This is what you're saying, and then that is how the Wireshark will of the attacker is going to take all the information, start taking all the information.
Right.
And do we able to segregate those information coming easily
Yes, in the Wireshark we can do that
with the filters, right?
with the filters. Right, with the
Okay,
filters
okay, okay,
we
got
can,
it. Okay.
yeah, we can filter the traffic on the basis of source IP address, destination IP address. Right. So we would be able to distinguish between the packets very easily.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's go to Wireshark. Let me show you how Wireshark works. Let's talk a little bit about Wireshark as well here. Wireshark. So you can switch on your Wireshark through the command line by simply typing its name, that is Wireshark. That's one way. Other way is by going here, okay, and searching for Wireshark here like this. That's also a way. Okay. Once you switch on your Wireshark, you will be presented with this kind of a screen. Here it is asking you that on which interface do you want to start sniffing. So I only have one interface as of now, that is ETH0. So I'm going to double click on it and it starts sniffing on that interface. Okay. So no packets so far. Let's try to generate some packets in the Wireshark. Let me open a browser, okay, and let me try to generate some packets. Like let's go to demo.testfire.net. Let's search here for, let's say, ch, enter. I'm just trying to create some random traffic in my network. Hmm. Let's do nmap ping as well. Hmm. Let's say 192.168.75.0/24. Okay. So I hope this much would be sufficient for some packets to be generated. Yeah. So here you can see that here you can see these are the number of packets that have been captured so far. Right. So have any one of you used Wireshark earlier prior to this? Okay. What about others? Others are sleeping. Hmm. I believe Monica is having some internet issues and Lakshya has not used Wireshark. Okay. What about you, Ben? Have you used Wireshark earlier? Nope. Okay. Okay. So in the bottom most here where I have highlighted, you can see these are the number of packets which have been captured so far. Essentially, these are the number of packets which I've captured so far. Okay. And out of these packets, how many packets are being shown to me on the screen? That is being mentioned here under the displayed field. That is basically telling me how many packets are being displayed currently on the screen. So first of all, let me stop the packet capture. How can I stop the packet capture? By clicking on this red button. Okay. So let's click on this red button and you can see that it is going to stop the packet capture. Okay. Yeah, right. These are the data packets that we are receiving on the etho interface, ETH0 interface. These are those packets. If I would be having more than one NIC, okay, then I would have been provided with more interfaces here. Okay. So these are those packets which are being received at etho interface. Let's go ahead then. So here you can see these are your packets which have been captured, which have been captured. And at the bottom most, you can see that the number which was fluctuating, which was increasing, now it is stable because the packet capture has actually been stopped. That number is going to remain constant now. Okay. Okay. Now let's try making some sense out of the packet capture. How can we make sense out of this? So in front of you, you can see data in different columns. So this is basically, you can say, summary of data, summary of packets that you have captured so far. The source column is going to tell you what is the source IP address of the packet. Okay. These individual row is a packet, is one packet. These every individual row is one packet. The destination column is going to tell you what destination column is going to tell you what. Tell me. Right. The destination IP address of the packet, where the packets are headed, right? That is the destination address here. The protocol, as the name itself suggests, the protocol is going to tell you the type of protocol that is being used by that packet. Okay. And then we have got length of the packet, and then we have got some more brief information about the packet. Okay. Anytime if I want to dissect this packet, if I want to inspect this packet in detail, what I can do is I can simply click on a packet and double click on it and open it. So this is your packet inspection, you can say, or packet dissection, you can say. Okay. So I've opened this packet, and here you can see on the left hand side, this is some sort of hex output. Okay. This is your hex output. Okay. And can any one of you tell me what is this? What do you see here? Packet information, right? Packet information to sahi hai, but what do we call it as? Protocols. It is abiding. Okay. These are essentially your protocol headers. Okay. If you guys would have heard about OSI model, in the OSI model, we have got this process of encapsulation and decapsulation. Okay. So here essentially you can look into the encapsulation and the decapsulation process. Okay. Like every layer is trying to attach its own header onto that packet: UDP, IP, Ethernet frame, DNS. Okay. So if the packet is leaving your machine, it is going to be encapsulated. If it is being received to your machine, it is going to be decapsulated. Both of them are going to be visible to you in here only. Okay. So what you can try doing is you can try to double click on them, open them. Okay. And you can try going through them. You can try inspecting them. This is your packet header analysis. Okay. So for packet header analysis, you guys need to be very well versed with the headers at least. Okay. What are the headers and what should I expect in the headers? In what field, what should I expect? Where, what should I expect? These are your packet headers. Again, this thing boils down to the networking. Hmm? I'm talking about these headers. Uh, packet let's say UDP. So this is how your UDP header looks like. Very small header. Okay. And I believe this is how your TCP header looks like. No, this is not TCP. This is your IP header. This is how your IP header looks like. And this is how your TCP header looks like. Okay. So while doing a practical packet analysis, you guys must be very well versed with all these protocols and their headers, so that you can make sense out of these analysis. Okay, meanwhile, let's close this thing. Let's talk about how we can filter the data here. Okay, how we can go through the output efficiently. So in this demo, we only have 1500 packets. Okay, we only have 1500 packets, right? You can see here. So 1500 packets are not that much. But when you are going to run it in a corporate network, when you are going to run it in a machine which is actively communicating with multiple devices, what you are going to see is within a minute or two, more than 1 lakh packets would have been captured by the Wireshark. Okay, if you try to sniff for about 5 to 10 minutes, you will be having more than a million packets. Hmm? Right, Vaibhav? You have tried using Wireshark, you would have observed this thing. Yeah, the number keeps on increasing if it is streaming. Yeah, and if you are inside a corporate network, there is always going to be some kind of a communication that is happening between the hosts. Okay, if I talk about some kind of a network engineer, system admin, and if you are at such position and you're trying to run a Wireshark, you are going to be flooded with these packets. Okay, so in those times it becomes very difficult for an individual to go through all of the output. Okay, you just cannot read through 1 lakh packets one by one. Okay, practically that is not possible. So for those days we have got filters option over here. Okay, here you can see there's a filter option. Okay, so these filters, what are these filters? These filters are basically to show me some specific output. Let's say I only want to see packets on the basis of protocol. I want to filter it on the basis of protocol. I only want to see TCP based packets. So what I can do is I can simply type TCP here, TCP, and press enter. And what you are going to see is my output is filtered, and here you can see the numbers has changed. The number of total packets which were captured is 1594, and the number of packets which are being displayed is 776. Okay, right? Guys, are you able to follow along? Yes. What about others? Yes, yes. Okay. What about you, Ben? Okay. So similarly, what I can do is I can try using some other protocol here like UDP, and it is only going to show me the UDP based packets. And in here you can see that only 32 packets are UDP based. Okay. So now UDP based packets are going to be shown to me. So this was one way of filtering the traffic, filtering on the basis of protocol. Now let's say if I want to filter on the basis of IP address. How can I do that on the basis of IP address? I can do IP dot addr is equals to I need to provide with an IP address, let's say 192.168.75.135, or do we have anything else here? Yeah, dot 2 is also here, dot 2. So 2.1% of the packets are being shown to me. And now what it is going to do is, it is only going to show me those packets which are having this IP address. This IP address is going to be found in source or destination. Where? No, not in source. It is going to be found in both of the fields, in source as well as destination. Okay, you can see this packet. This packet is being displayed to me because my mentioned IP address is in the destination field. But if I talk about this packet is being displayed to me because this IP address is in the source field. Okay, so on and so forth. You can check them out. Whether this IP address is going to be in source or destination, any of them, it is going to be displayed here. Okay. Why do we use IP.addr? If we want to see all the traffic, all the traffic either originating from a host or being sent to a host, then we are going to use IP.addr. Okay. Okay. Now let's say if I want to filter, I only want to see those packets which have this IP address in the source. I only want to see these packets. Then what can I do? So then I'm going to use some different filter. Okay. In that case scenario, okay, we already have an answer over here. So my filter is going to be IP dot src is equal to the specific IP address. And now it is only going to show me those packets which are being originating from this IP address. Okay. Right. And there's one more thing that you guys can observe is there is a color encoding scheme that is followed by the Wireshark. Okay. So you can know more about color encoding. Let's go to the view, go to the coloring rules, and you can read more about the coloring of these packets. Like if there is a packet which is having red background and yellow text, that means it's a reset based packet, TCP reset packet. Okay. Getting back here, if I want to see all those packets which are destined for this host, then you can see that it is only going to show me those packets which are being sent to this IP address. I hope ip.addr, ip.src, ip.dst is clear. Filtering packets on the basis of IP address, filtering back packets on the basis of protocol. Okay. Similarly, what we can do is we can filter packets on the basis of port as well. Okay. Let's say I can do TCP dot port is equals to 80. So what this is going to do is this is going to filter the packets on the basis of port 80. Only going to show me those packets which are either being originating or destined for this port. Similarly, I can do udp.port. So what kind of traffic is going to be shown to me if I use this filter? Can any one of you tell me? DNS, right? DNS is your UDP based. DNS is going to generate some UDP based traffic. That is one thing. Another thing is that it is going to work using port number 53. So if you are looking for DNS traffic, you can use this filter. Okay. So I can see here that in total, there are 32 packets, 32 DNS based packets. Okay. Okay. Now let's say if I want to combine more than one filter, how can I combine more than one filter? So here what I can do is I can use my logical operators. Okay. And my logical operators here are, one is your and operator, another one is your or operator, another one is your not operator. These are the three operators that are available to me. Okay. How to use them? Let's say let's say I want to see all the packets that are being originating from IP address A and that are being sent to IP address B. Okay. So I can simply type here. Let me close this. Um, let's take this one as an example. 1729. So ip.src is equals to my IP address 192. And ip.dst So now you can see what I have done here. Right, so I have basically combined more than one filter here. One is ip.src, another one is ip.dst. Okay. And the AND that I'm using here is your logical AND operator, the AND gate. Hmm. This is the one. This is the operator that I'm using here. Okay. So as you know that AND is only going to show me the output as true when both of the inputs are going to be true. Okay. So when both of the condition matches, then only the AND is going to return you the output. That's why I am able to see only those packets which are originating from an IP address and destined for an IP address. Similarly, I can use not operator. Okay, I can simply negate this filter by putting an exclamation mark here. Let's put an exclamation mark here. So can anyone explain me this filter that I have created here? This is the filter that I created. Tell me. This is your not. Exclamation mark means not operator to negate something. I hope you guys are aware of the Boolean operators. So it is going to display all IP addresses from source to destination except. Okay. What about others? Input is true, but output is false. I don't understand that thing. Output is only going to be false when one of the input is going to be false. And if the output is, yeah, that's the behavior of not gate, right? True input, output is false. Yeah, right. That is the behavior of not gate. What I'm saying is what kind of packets are going to be displayed if I'm going to use this filter in a single line. So basically, guys, what is going to happen in this case is it is going to show me all the packets which are originating from this specific IP address that I have mentioned, that is 75.135. Show me all the packets which are originating from this IP address, excluding those excluding those packets which are being sent to the specific IP address, that is 176.924.204.152. Excluding these packets. Okay, that is what it is going to do. I hope this thing is clear. Okay. We can see it in the Wireshark as well. So there are symbols as well for this operator. Like for AND, we have got M%. This is your AND operator. Double pipe means OR. And what OR is going to do? What this filter is going to do? This is your OR operator. Tell me. Pass packets except the source IP. Pass packets except the source IP. I don't know if I'm able to understand. What about others? Give it a try. So this is basically your OR operator. Okay. So what this filter is going to do is, this is going to show me the output of those packets. First of all, if one condition is true, it is going to show me the output, because in OR operator, 0 0 is 0, 0 1 is 1, 1 0 is 1, 1 1 is 1. So it is going to show me the packets which are originating from this IP address and destined for this IP address. That is, both of the conditions are true. It is going to show me those packets. It is going to show me those packets where this condition is true and this condition is false, like all those packets which are being originating from this IP address but not being sent here. It is going to be shown to me here. It is going to show me those packets as well which are not originating from here but they are going here. It is going to show me those type of packet as well. Okay, because all of these inputs gives you true output. Okay. Okay, so I believe that this much would be enough for Wireshark. Let me show you one more filter, that is TCP contains. TCP contains, let's say, CH. So now what it is going to do is, if you know a specific keyword that you are looking for, what you can do is you can use this filter to look for all the packets you mean it will display those packets which source IP this and destination IP is this. Yeah, in in case of AND, it is going to show me that. So if I say TCP contains CH, what it is going to do is it is going to show me those packets which contains this keyword. Okay, so I opened the browser and I did this search here. Okay, I use this keyword to do a search. Okay, and in the Wireshark, that packet is being shown to me. Here you can see get slash search dot JSP question mark query is equal to CH. Okay. So I hope now everyone is having a good idea of how to use Wireshark, what is Wireshark, and how you can filter out your traffic using Wireshark. Right. Now let's talk about ARP poisoning. So first of all, what is ARP protocol? Who is going to tell me? What is ARP protocol? Right, that is the full form for ARP. What is its use? Discover the link layer address. What is the link layer address? Is it something that is mentioned on the Google? Are you guys trying to copy it from the Google? Let me also check it out. Huh? ARP. Very good. The address protocol is communication protocol used for discovering the link layer address. Very good. Nice. So, yeah, right. It is used for discovering the link layer address. Okay. And link layer address is nothing but your MAC address, essentially your MAC address. Okay. So basically, ARP protocol is responsible for your IP address to MAC address binding. Okay. Because inside a local area network, what happens? Switching happens. Okay. Inside a local area network, switching is done by switch, routing is done by routers. Okay. And how does switching happens? So switching is basically done on the basis of source and destination MAC addresses, not on the basis of source and destination IP addresses. I hope this thing is clear. On the basis of source and destination MACs, right? So same as CAM table. No, CAM table is different. ARP table is different. CAM table contains the entries for MAC address to interface binding, and it is only present with the network device. On the other hand, ARP table contains the entries for IP address and MAC addresses, and there is going to be an ARP table present in each and every host. Okay. So it's like if I have got uh, Bob here in my network, Bob is going to have an ARP table. Okay. And in its ARP table, so in CAM table, interface binding happen, but no IP binding, right? Right. ARP table. If I talk about its ARP table, it is going to be having an IP address here, pipe MAC address over here. An IP address, it is going to contain the entries like 10.0.0.7. That is the Alice IP address, and Alice IP address is that AAA, something like that. Okay. This is how your ARP table on the Bob side is going to look like. Okay. And similarly on Alice side, the ARP table is going to look like PBBBBBB, something like that. Okay. Let's just do it in the blue color. You guys can check out your ARP table in your command prompt by simply typing ARP space hyphen A. Okay. That's how your ARP tables are going to look like. These are your this is your ARP table. Okay. Now what attacker is going to do here is attacker is going to send fake ARP replies to both of these machines. Okay. What attacker is going to do is attacker is going to say to Bob that 10.0.0.7 this IP address is having different MAC address, that is CCCCC. CCCC MAC address is your attacker's MAC address. Okay. As a result, what is going to happen? Hmm, Entries that are written here are going to be overwritten. Okay. It is going to be overwritten by CCCCC. Let's make it maroon. And the same thing is going to be done here as well. That 10.0.0.1 is at the CCCCCC. Okay. And your previous entries are going to be overwritten. These are going to be overwritten with the new entries. And this is essentially known as your ARP cache poisoning. What is going to happen when these entries are overwritten? Can anyone tell me? Once the attacker has successfully been able to poison the ARP tables, what is going to happen next? Right, all data will go through attacker computer. So when Alice is going to be sending something to Bob, the data is going to go this way. The data is going to be sent to the attacker. And when Bob wants to send something to Alice, still the data is going to be sent to the attacker. Now the attacker is going to forward that data to the Alice and is going to forward this data to the Bob. This is your MITM, man in the middle attack. Any doubt so far? Now what I want you guys to do is I want you guys to try this thing practically. Okay. For this you need to have 3 devices. Okay. You need to set up one VM which is going to act as a Bob, one VM that is going to act as Alice, and there is one VM that is going to act as an attacker. Okay. And what you can do for this is you can simply use your previously downloaded image, Kali image, and set up 3. I think the attacker's address will be rewritten, or will it remain the same? It will be rewritten. So what you guys need to do is you guys need to set up 3 machines in your lab environment. Take a note of their IP addresses. Okay. And assign a Alice out of these 3 machines, assign a Bob in there. Okay. And assign an attacker. As an attacker, you need to try doing this ARP poisoning. How can you do that ARP poisoning? Let me give you the steps here. Yeah, better cap, better cap. These are your certain examples for it. Okay. What I am going to tell you is using ARP spoof. It's a command line based utility. Okay. You just need to open your Linux terminal and you need to type this command. There's a space in between here, a single space. Okay. You need to open two terminals in your Kali Linux system. Okay. And so I've taken the example from the image itself. 10.0.1 is your Bob IP address, and this is your Alice IP address here. Once you need to run this command, okay, and in another terminal you need to run this command. After you run this command, so what you need to do is you need to go to all of these individual machines and try reading their ARP tables. Okay, in Linux you can simply type ARP to show the ARP table. In Windows you can type ARP space -a to check out the ARP table. So use this command in all of the machines. Okay, before and after, and check out if you are able to change the entries in the ARP table. Right, guys? Everything clear up till this point? So this is one way that you can do. There are other ways as well, using some other tools. Okay, you guys can try exploring it by yourself as well. Like WebHub, you can try doing it using BetterCap. Okay, you can use some other tool as well. But I have experience with ARP spoof, and it works perfectly fine every time. And the spelling is wrong here. The spelling is ARP spoof. This is the spelling of the tool. Okay. So I hope you guys can do this thing by yourself, and by Friday you would be done with this thing. Okay. Shall I give you guys an assignment? Hmm? Do an ARP poisoning. Hmm? So, right. So this is going to be your assignment. Okay. Just create a very small report. Okay. You can use inbuilt report note taking application like Cherry Tree. Okay. You can use Cherry Tree to save your screenshots. Just type Cherry Tree. This is your inbuilt note taking application. Tree add notes, yada yada yada. Okay. What you can do is you can press Control Shift Print Screen inside your Kali Linux, and you can simply drag and paste it here using Control plus V, and the screenshot is going to be placed here. Okay. Okay. So let's do one thing. Save no. Where is my paint? Do this small assignment. Take a screenshot for IP addresses of all the machines by using ipconfig or ifconfig. Then take a screenshot of ARP table of all the machines before you have done ARP spoofing. After that, try running the ARP spoof command. Once that is done, check out the ARP table. If that ARP table has been modified or not, take a screenshot of it, paste it in the document, save the document, and mail it to me. Okay. Now you guys can face one issue while using ARP spoof. It can say that this command is not found. If that is the case, you can use sudo apt install dsniff package. Okay. Just run this command if ARP spoof is not already installed. Okay. Any doubts? Where can I download Windows 7 VM image? No doubt as such. Okay. I don't remember from where did I downloaded it. Did you try doing a Google search? Hmm. Windows 7. Because I have not downloaded Windows 7 lately. I already have these stuff downloaded already. Let me check it out. Okay, so you can download it from here. It says follow these steps to download. You need to have an activation key. And let me see if I have shared the activation key in the Telegram group. I believe probably I shared the activation keys of Windows 7 XP, Windows 8 in my Telegram group. If it is not there, you can let me know. I'll share the keys with you. This command installed dsniff saying unable to. Can you share your screen with me? I have given you permission for screen sharing. Monica, please share your screen with me so that I can troubleshoot that. It's on my laptop, and you are attending the meeting from a phone, not from your laptop. Very good, Monica. Very good. Uh, so, okay, not an issue. So, if that is not working, let me share my screen back. Try running first of all sudo apt update. Okay. And after that, try running this sudo apt install dsniff. If it does not work still, then let me know. Probably there are certain repository files that are missing. I got something in the chat. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Windows 7 keys, product keys. Use these keys from here, paste it here, click on verify, see if you are able to download it. Okay, Vaibhav? Okay, do I need to share these URLs or you will be able to find it? Share it in the chat.